Brian Callen and Brennan Schaub, they have a podcast called The Fighter and the Kid. And Brian Callen recently got Me Too'd. And all of a sudden, he stopped appearing as a guest on The Fighter and the Kid. Then they went and made a separate podcast behind a paywall on Patreon called The Fighter and the Rinks. The Rinks is Brian's nickname. And then that got removed as well. Schaub keeps going on about how much he owns everything he does. He was famously on Take Your Shoes Off podcast saying, I own everything I do, all this kind of stuff. But it turns out he doesn't. There's a company called Cast Media, which represent them. And they don't want anything to do with Callen. They've publicly said they don't want anything to do with Brian Callen, to the point where he can't even do a podcast with Schaub anywhere else because it will jeopardize Schaub's deal with Cast Media. So I guess the thing I wanted to speak to you guys about, when people say they own their own product and they don't actually own their own product, I mean, what's going on there? What are your guys' thoughts?
This goes back to like understanding principles. And if you have principles and you understand principles, then you can sort of look at every situation that comes up under those principles. It's real simple for me. So let's compare it to guys who actually do own everything that they do. So there's some pretty big media names. Guys that come to mind right off the bat are obviously Dave Portnoy at Barstool, a guy like Clay Travis at Outkick Sports, a guy like, who's the Dilbert guy?
Scott Adams.
Scott Adams. Okay, so we talk about guys who literally own everything that they produce. Their brand, their name, their content, Massey hates it, but their IP, they own everything. Well, now the difference is real simple, and Roman talks about it all the time. The difference between Dave Portnoy and Brendan Schaub and Brian Callen is real simple, is that Dave Portnoy was willing to eat shit and work shitty jobs and turn down money up front in order to own his own brand. The Schaub and Callens don't want to do that. They don't want to do the work. So what basically happens is they sell their name and their brand out to a company who's willing to front them the money and do all the work up front. And in return, that company owns the IP, right? I mean, isn't that basically what we're talking about?
Sounds like it. I mean, they own it. They may not have it on a contract, but they de facto own it by the fact that they can pull sponsorship and pull the money away.
But the reason that they own it is because they're willing to put money up front. Whereas if Schaub and Callen had said, hey, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to go into our own pocket. We're going to take our money from doing stand-up. We're going to take our money from the careers that we've had, and we're going to pay our own production costs, our own lawyers, our own marketing company, and we're going to own everything. We're going to hire our own attorneys. Well, then you end up being Dave Portnoy. But when you don't do that, when you're willing to just take the easiest road because you want someone else to do it all, when it goes bad, you're left without a chair, right? I mean, maybe, am I missing something?
Yeah, like what you're saying makes perfect sense. I just have a question for you guys because I think you understand podcasting very well. I totally get when, say, an actor signs a 10-movie deal with Marvel or somebody signs with HBO to do three seasons of a show, because that requires a lot of money up front. Like, they don't have their own production crew and all of that. With podcasting, a medium that you can do out of your bedroom, what is the advantage of signing a deal up front with someone like Cast or Spotify or whatever when there's so many people that are doing it on no budget and making a good living? What's the sell? What's the allure?
It's the fact that you don't have to set it up. Right?
Yeah, and you want to drive a purple Porsche.
But we've already established, like, it's pretty low budget. Like, I get signing with Marvel because I don't know how to fucking make a big budget Halloween movie. But when a bunch of guys like Joe Budden and Joe Rogan and whatever the two top Joes of podcasting have proved that you don't need a ton of money to do this, why are people, now that it's the cat's out of the bag, why would people still be signing with these podcast companies?
I think they do the marketing and everything. So production,
they do everything.
Right. So it's what Sean's saying. Like, they just don't want to do it. Is it that simple? They just don't want to do it.
They don't. You don't want to do the work, and why do you want to go into your own pocket? This is not just something that's in podcast people. This is in entrepreneurs across the board. Like, no one wants to bootstrap their company if a VC is gonna write you a check for $500,000. Are you really gonna borrow the $500K from everyone you know and all your relatives and borrow it on your own name and take a bank loan? Well, if you're a fuck you entrepreneur, you are, because you don't want the VC to own your company. But what are most people doing today? They're taking the VC money up front. That's all Cast Media is. It's VC money up front. We're going to give you money up front. We're going to handle the production. We're going to handle the marketing. So all you got to do is sit back and sit down in a studio that we made for you. You've got to show up and talk, and we'll handle everything else. You don't have to talk to lawyers. You don't have to talk to production people. You don't have to talk to anyone, because we're going to handle it for you. And that sounds amazing right up until it's not.
Okay, so my follow-up to that.
I didn't think about production either.
Well, they've been doing the production. So to get to a point where a company like Spotify offers you a deal, you have to have been handling the production up until that
Rogan
point.
was.
Well, no.
Yeah.
Well, Fighter and the Kid weren't. They were on Fox.
From
Yeah.
day one?
Yeah.
Yeah, they started on
They
Fox.
started on
yeah.
Fox.
Oh.
So they went from Fox to Cast Media. So when they went to Cast Media, they got more control than with Fox, but they were still giving up. They still had concessions. And this is one of the big ones. And it's interesting you mentioned production value, because obviously now Callan and Shub can't do anything together at all, because it jeopardizes Shub's deal with Cast Media. But Callan has just released a new video, and the production value is so bad. It's like he doesn't even have a microphone. He's using a room mic, and he's doing a video. It's horrendous.
I saw that. You linked it, and his eyes are all crazy and shit.
Well, he's just had surgery.
He looks insane. Like, what's up with his face? Like, he looks like somebody called it like Manson eyes. Like, he just looks.
Yeah, he just had eyelid surgery to remove like old skin. I mean, he was going full Hollywood, and then
Okay, now I just feel bad for making.
There's also something else too, which is, I think, something that we're talking about as a society right now in a lot of places. We're expecting actors to be good businessmen, and generally they're not. We're expecting celebrities to be good business people, and we're expecting athletes to sort of, be the voice on international politics and international relations and things. Like, we're expecting people to be because they're famous. We're expecting people to step completely out of their area of expertise into another area, and then we're holding them accountable for them not being experts in that area. But you would think that Schaub's people, you would think that they would hire someone to be like, yeah, you can sign this contract with Cast Media, but here's what you're given. Like, you would expect your agent to be like, you can do this, but here's the problem, right?
It's weird. You would think so, because Conan has a production company. He's not a business guy, but he hired people to do it for him.
Right.
So he owns Conan Co., and he employs all his own people, and he just has distribution deals with different companies, I guess, to just get stuff out there. But
right. But he also has a lot more. He has a lot more expendable capital. Yeah, he's smart.
he does. Well, yeah, he's been around a while. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to live like you're Leonardo DiCaprio and you're Brendan Schaub, you can't be putting $30,000 a month of your own money into a production company, right? You need to get paid.
It's just so sad when you get to a point where a company tells you which days to work, and you're supposedly the leader in your space, and a company's like, hey, you got to come in on Christmas. Like, that's just so weird to me. It kind of defeats the whole point of being that known, though. Like, what's the point of that level of public pressure if you can't even choose the days you got to work?
Because you don't own your company. You're just an employee at the end of the day.
So they trade off the freedom for the status?
No, they're trading off the work for the freedom.
work, yeah, for the
They
freedom.
don't want to do the work, and they don't want to fund it. This, to me, is just a funding and a time issue. You don't want to spend the time managing the company, and you don't want to spend the money to fund it yourself. So Cast Media comes along and says, hey, don't worry about it. We'll take care of everything, and we'll pay you guys up front.
That's pretty much what happened with the Caller Daddy.
Exactly. This is nothing new. This is the record industry. This is boxing promoters. This is every major industry where the artist doesn't understand the business side of it, or doesn't want to do the work, or doesn't want to put up their own money, and then cries foul when the big company who put up all the money says, no, we actually own everything. You sold out a long time ago. You didn't want to be Dave Portnoy driving around in your mom's car, handing out newspapers at 10 cents a pop, trying to make money $1 at a time. And now Dave Portnoy can tell everybody in the media world to eat a dick because he owns literally every aspect of his company.
Yeah, the founder of The Onion was the same way. He said when he started, he was literally handing out printed versions of it on the street, and he kept the equity right up until the end when he could sell. He owned it for like 20 years, and he actually built a business out of it. versus now, if you want to be a writer for someone else, like you pretty much do what they say, unless you want to build the thing yourself.
But it's the same thing in entrepreneurship, right? If you don't bootstrap your company, you're owned by the VC, right? It's the model's exactly the same. It's just tilted a little bit because it's entertainment, right?
Yeah, I just what I get with the music label model is I can't organize my own world tour. I have no idea how. I have no idea with concert or events. With publishing, I don't own a book publishing press thing, so I rely on that. With podcasting, it's just the marginal cost is so low. I don't get why they don't just want to literally hire someone to do it themselves for cheap. I'm not even saying put up 30 grand a month of your own money, but like the Tim Dillon guy I watch, I don't know if you guys seen him on Rogan. He just has like an intern or somebody working for him that just produces the podcast, and he does it out of his backyard. And it gets the same reach as any other podcast. Like, yeah, people
Sure,
don't
but
really
some of
care.
it's ego, but some of it's ego too, right? Like they don't want the production cost or the marketing to slip.
Right. But if you're listening audio on your commute to work or whatever, and it sounds good enough, like what do people care? What does the consumer care?
What do you think? But what do you think a good marketing company is going to charge them to do all of the marketing every month? It's 30 grand a month,
Right?
Minimum. So so if you want to hire a marketing company to handle all of your YouTube, all of your Instagram, all of your Facebook ads, all of that stuff for a show like The Fighter and the Kid, I mean, it's not that expensive when you consider they're a company and what they're probably bringing in, but that's a decent chunk of money for you to shell now. And then you add on the other side, the production costs a month. It's not $1,000 a month to run your own podcast, especially now when you're competing against large companies. But it is definitely something that if you make a substantial living that you could fund yourself.
The other thing is as well, Schaub has got 3 podcasts with Cast Media. He's got The Fighter and the Kid, The King and the Sting, which is one he does with Theo Von, and then Below the Belt with Brendan Schaub. So he's probably getting some deal where it's easier to get that company to handle it rather than them handle it. I mean, he's pulled Callan along for the ride, like he's done constantly to Callan. I mean, this is Callan's fault, but he's basically fucked Brian over at every stage. You know, how he got Callan to release his special along with Fighter and the Kid 3D and all this kind of stuff. The question I have is, could they have got as big without Cast Media? Probably not, right?
That's the question.
So it's the shortcut to get in.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's the money now versus money later.
Exactly, yeah.
But if you're Brendan Schaub and you're The Fighter and the Kid, you could find a production company where you say, listen, I'm just paying you a monthly fee.
Yes.
For your studio time and to handle all the production. I'm just paying you a fee. You don't own any of the thing. Our company's going to pay you a fee, and that company's going to be like, okay, well, this is what it costs per month. But the problem is you're going to shell out that money every month.
Yeah, well, ideally you're bringing in enough from ads to at least cover it. And I'm wondering with the podcast boom, if we're going to see more people going out there that are going to be kind of like podcast mercenaries that are going to approach big podcasters and just say, hey, I'm going to be your producer. I'm going to do your marketing.
Yeah.
And they're going to do it on a budget rather than going to a big company with a big studio. Kind of like a hybrid model of somebody that is just going to handle that for a creator.
I think it's there now, but you can't do that and drive a new Porsche every month.
That's true.
Well, because the money that you're making goes to pay the production company as opposed to Cast Media paying you a salary every month. So it's just a question of, are you willing to eat shit now so that in 5 years you have a media company that's worth $30 million or $40 or $50 million? Or do you want to get paid a $250,000 a year salary right now? I hate to quote Karl Marx, but the two most addictive things in the world are heroin and a monthly salary.
Yeah, the lesson here is you got to give up the Porsche.
Right. You have to eat the shit because you're trying to build a larger company that you own as opposed to being like, no, I need to get paid right now.